Hi, I'm Falcon FPV, and today we're going to go over how to assemble my newest frame release, the 7.5-inch Falcon RPM. Let's not waste any time. Let's get back to the bench there behind me, and first we'll go over what you're going to get in the package, and then we'll take a look at how to assemble the Falcon RPM frame. All right, let's get started. So one small difference between what I've got and what you'll be getting is I'll be giving CNC drones a bunch of these accessory kits, so each frame will come with this in your envelope. CNC drones and CNC Madness stickers. I'm going to put it in with cardboard to hold it and protect it a bit. So I guess they just taped their sealed bag to the cardboard to help protect the frame, I assume, in shipping. All right, so that's everything out of the package. All right, so let's take a look at what's in here then. So we've got the base plate, the very bottom one, with all its press nuts installed. And there's the main plate with all the press nuts for this one. They're all installed there. And I should maybe go over some of this stuff while I got it out here like this. The funny looking stuff in the back is a 20 by 20, 30 by 30, and 25.5 by 25.5 mounts. And as well, there's a bit of a cooling pattern built into the carbon to help with all the VTXs these days and how hot they're getting, especially the O3 air unit. And then there's the top plate, also with some press nuts installed there and countersinks for the all the top fasteners, so you don't wreck your battery if your battery slides around. And now we've got our arms. Front and back, all 8mm. And the front and back arms, you can see, are actually quite similar. They're almost identical, but they aren't. The angle is slightly different, and there's a slight difference in the location of where the fastener ends up on it. And one more piece of carbon to go. And this is the center block that goes between the arms. And there's all these standoffs for it. So for the holding up the top plate, 6 25mm standoffs. And then there's 4 5mm standoffs. This is for the main GoPro mount. And then you should have, last for the standoffs here, you should get 10 10mm standoffs. There's all the fasteners. I'll go over the fasteners in just a minute. Let's just take a look now at the accessory bag that will also be included. So the top plate has a cutout for a mountable XT60. So you get the XT60E-M, I think it's called. That can be mounted to the top plate here. Your accessory kit will also come with 2, I think it's M2.5 fasteners that you can use to secure that onto the top plate there. So it fits in like that. And just do up the fasteners here. And to attach this, you need a 1.5mm hex driver. I'm just going to put this on the top plate right away now, so it's just one less thing to lose one of these fasteners or something. And then if you happen to break something or need to work on your top plate, it's not a big deal. Just undo these 2 fasteners and let the XT60 lead loose so you can remove the top plate. Oh, and I guess I'll keep the top plate out here because one of the other things that's included, just a little insert if you want to use it that can press into place in the top plate. And there's going to be a clear one and a colored one with each one. And the accessory kits will also include these little guys, the 1.6 millimeter by 8 millimeter. I think they are also a 1.5 millimeter hex driver. Yeah. And that's to go through the bottom of your bottom plate there, and to fasten your O3 air unit. These only work to attach the O3 air unit from one side of it, and that's when you install it the logical way with the micro USB port up at the top here, so you can manage to plug something into it. Since I don't have a spare O3 air unit, this is just going to be easier to show you on the already built version here. So I've got the O3 air unit fastened that way up, and also included here will be a small 20 by 14 heatsink that fits just nicely on top of the O3 air unit to help cool it off. I've also included a piece of thermal transfer, double-sided heat transfer tape. So you can use some of that on the back side of your heatsink, and if you want, you can use the other little leftover piece to attach to fasten the O3 air unit down to the bottom plate. There's also going to be a piece of this VHB tape. It's also a double-sided one, and you can use this for putting down your receiver or possibly your VTX. Although I'd guess, depending on your VTX, like if you got a Rush Solo or something like that, you'd probably want to use the heat transfer tape, and then you would stick it down on top of this part in the back here, so it gets a little extra cooling underneath. And also with the Rush Solo, same thing. If you cut your heat transfer tape, because half of it will probably work nicely to keep the heatsink on, and you can use the other half to attach the VTX to the bottom plate. And you just do whatever you want with the VHB tape here. I use it for my receiver. And the last thing in the accessory pack here is a cable that I actually had these custom made because I couldn't find any. So basically it's exactly like the DJI 3-in-1 cable. Unfortunately with white connectors instead of black, but yeah. And here I can show you again on my build here that this cable I had sized just right. And so I had them make this cable just the right length. This is actually, I didn't even use my own good cable. This I bought some earlier on, and they ended up being just this cheap plastic coated wire. So I've got like 80 of these little plastic coated wire extension things that I'm just going to throw in the garbage, because I'm going to give you guys the nice new silicone custom made ones. But on my build, I've got the crappy one because I didn't have these nice silicone ones yet. They took like a month to come. But these are the same length. So your nice silicone one will fit in just like this. So with the T-Motor F7 Pro full function flight controller, the 3-in-1 cable is just plug and play with the O3 air unit. One end plugs into the flight controller, the other end just feeds in through the hole in the frame here and comes around up back and plugs right into the O3 air unit. So this will just make everything nice and easy for it plugging that all in and connecting it together. Now as well, this is the same connector. Well, it doesn't have the clip-on part on the outside, but it's still the same SH 1.0 6-pin connector that the Rush Solo uses. So although you won't have the click-on part holding it permanently on the outside, this does just fit right in nice and snug into the Rush Solo, and then you can just snip the connector off the other side and then solder that directly to your flight controller. So this will work for people using O3 air units and for and for the Rush Solo VTX, and I'm sure a bunch of other VTXs will fit the same SH 1.0 6-pin. All right, I've moved everything out of the way there. And the last thing to look at that we're getting in the package is the fastener bag here. So let's start with separating these all out into piles, because the frame is quite specific with what length of fastener you need to use where. All right, and we'll just separate all the fasteners from longest to shortest. So you might have to actually hold them up together and just take a look at them to make sure you're getting all the right ones in the right piles. Now for 10mm, there should be 22 of them, and that's because I've included 16 of these 10mm for fastening the motors. Now, the ideal fastener length is going to be 11mm for fastening your motors. So I don't know, I've done what I can to include motor fasteners here, but if you want to use the ones that come with it, the 10mm ones, they only sink 2mm into the motor base. But 10mm is what I've used on all my builds. So to start, you're going to want to separate out the front and back arms, and you can easily find that out by just lining them up there. If they line up with these holes on the outside and fit together in the middle over top of the other press nut, then those are the front ones. If I had them in the wrong space, you'd see that they don't fit in over top of that press nut in the middle when I hold these holes lined up. So these are obviously the front ones, and these ones, they're obviously much too long to fit together over top of that center press nut, so these must be the back ones. Before we get to putting the arms on, we need to install some of our 8mm standoffs. So take your base plate with the arm press nuts facing down, an 8mm standoff up on top there at the rear set of these holes, and you're going to want to use a 5mm button head fastener to fasten that 8mm standoff. And you'll probably just have to start most of the fasteners off like this, because I size all my holes to 2.9mm, not 3. And it just keeps everything that little bit stiffer. All right, and I'll get my second 8mm fastener, or 8mm standoff on here. So you can see it's on out of this pair of holes here in the middle of the front of the frame. It's on the one further back. And this press nut's fitting upwards, goes upwards. These other 4 are facing down. Take another 8mm standoff, and this time I'm going to use a 14mm fastener. I'm just going to get that through enough that it's just that the fastener's just sticking out at the top of the standoff there. So it's not done up all the way, it's still sticking out on the bottom there. And one more of these. In the other middle hole here, in the center of the backside. And again, I'm just going to put it out so it sticks out just a little bit out of the standoff. You can see it's not quite done up all the way. Put that together, and I'm just going to do up a couple twists on this here to lock the 2 plates together loosely, because those ones that are holding those center 2 8mm standoffs, they go into these 2 press nuts, and that'll hold that together for us, but it should keep it loose enough that we can still fit our arm in there nicely. and use one of our 14mm fasteners. So I'm just going to do that up loosely. I'm not going to snug it down too much yet. Get the other front arm in here. And of course, this is another 14mm. Now that we've got the two front arms in, let's do that one up just a little tighter so it's not flopping around. I've got the two front arms in. I'm going to place the two back arms together so that the center line is nice and tight between them. Then I'm just going to hold this center block over that and double check. So that's backwards because it's not fitting nicely. So now there I can see that fits better for the back. So the other side goes forward. So we're just going to put that in between here. With the little V shape fitting into the back side of the front arms up here. Now we've got that center block in there, we can slide our back arms in. And you should be able to feel if they're fitting into that centerpiece properly or not. It's a little bit of wiggling, but yeah, there we go. Feels like everything's fit together there. And of course, two more 14mm fasteners. And I can see it's not going together because this small bump in the side of the leg, the side of the arm should be lined up right underneath the fastener there. So there's something about how my arms are in here that, there, I clicked that one back and now it slid forward. So now I can see that little bump is centered right in front of the fastener. And there, now it goes right through. Now you can flip it back over. And a 14mm fastener goes in the center of where the arms meet for the front arms. Again, I'm just going to do that up loosely for now. Now our 16mm fasteners, we're going to use 4 of those to go from the bottom of the frame. So the bottom is where the press nuts are for the outside parts of the arms. 2 more of the 16mm fasteners into the back. So now our 4 25mm standoffs screw onto these the other side of these 16mm fasteners. Now that we've got those on, we can go back through, just give everything a little wiggle, and now tighten down all the fasteners. You don't want to crank these on, just get them nice and firmly tightened. Now we'll tighten this strip of these 4 center ones. Do front and back first. And then these ones. Okay. So now that should feel like a really rigid, stiff arm connection now when when you've done all those. Nothing should wiggle or move. It should all be solid now. Depending on how you set up your back on your frame, I've designed it so that there's a 3D print that goes on the back underneath here. And that takes two 8mm standoffs inside underneath that print to help hold it on firmly. So I'm just going to show you the basic putting it together thing here, but there's a whole bunch of different prints for this too. So I'm actually going to probably do another separate video just to go over the 3D prints for this. So for instance, for this one, this receiver cover that goes in the back, I have another one that's got no back on it, so the air flows through to help cool underneath more. And that attaches with our last two 16mm fasteners with, hold on, one of our black anodized aluminum washers, and then the 8mm standoff. And you want to thread that all the way on, get the standoff screwed right tight onto the fastener like that. So do one more of those. Now we've got that together, we press it into the bottom of the TPU part. And then that's where we're going to fasten our last two standoffs here. So now we're going to use some of our 12mm fasteners here and a 5mm standoff with an anodized black washer on there. Kind of like what we did it for the back of the frame. So it's going to look like this when you're done. I'm going to make up 4 of those. I'm going to take our GoPro mount. I've got my Hero 11 mini mount here. There's also a Hero 8 mount that I have made up already. I'm just going to install these, push them into the hole there. This front ones sometimes are a little difficult to push through, but if you just give it a couple twists, it'll find its way through the middle there. All right, so that's all set now with our washers on top, the standoffs in there. Now our last standoffs, these 4 8mm. This part can be a little tricky. You just got to push 8mm standoff so that it's just perfectly sitting flush with the top of this TPU part. And then the portion of the TPU with the standoff in it goes in between the two plates. So it should look like that afterwards. And the 8mm standoff is inside here, in between the two plates. Now we're going to take another washer and put it onto one of our 14mm fasteners, along with one of those last remaining 8mm standoffs. Do one more of those. So now this goes in the bottom side. Just press it in as far as you can and then tighten this up. And now for this part you might want to, once you get it through, it'll start just kind of spinning a bit. if you press on this standoff, that 8mm standoff that's inside there, press on the side of that now, and that'll help you get it a little done up a little more tightly. So then same thing on this side. I'm going to do this up so I can tell it's done and it's just spinning. I'm going to press on the side of the standoff and turn it some more, and that's going to help me get it nice and tight. Now it'll still spin a little bit even when you got it tight, but you'll be able to feel that it goes nice and snug. And the GoPro mount goes over so that it's going into those top two holes there, and these back two, the same two in the back where we already have our 8mm standoffs underneath. Now that's what I really like about this method of attaching the GoPro mount. As you're tightening, it's loose, 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 and then it's just tight. It's done. No squishing and crushing the TPU. It's a really solid connection. Just get the same done for the front here. And the GPS and SMA mount just slides over the back standoffs like that. With a cutout in the back there, like a spacing. And you can see it's got a, the spacing cut out there for the mountable XT60 to fit into. So it all comes together nice and smooth there. So that's the basic setup and assembly for the Falcon RPM frame. Now there's still some more fasteners left behind here. A bunch of the 10mm for connecting your motors if you choose to use them. And then there's also some various ones left, a couple of 12s, a couple of 8s, and some more of the 5mm. The 3 spare 8mm fasteners are for anybody that wants to use this secondary GoPro mount in the front here. And I figured probably not many people are this isn't really gonna be something many people are gonna be using. But it's nice just to have the options there, so. Because this front part of the frame is just providing extra space for different mounting positions for batteries, so. So you can use those extra 3 8mm fasteners to attach a universal GoPro mount up front here. I got several different ones that can be used. There's this angled one, and there's a straight one, and there's one that's angled back the other direction. Because really a big part of what's going on with this frame is just opening up lots of possibilities for camera mounting and getting multiple shots of things. I've taken the fingers off of this one, but so with that second mount, or with that TPU part screwed on there now, you can have a second camera. For me, I wanted to do this because I can shoot one in, say, linear and the other one in wide, or shoot one in wide and one in super view. Or I can even shoot one at 30 FPS and the other one at 60 FPS and just use the 60 FPS when I want to speed footage up. I can shoot one on with the shutter on auto and one with the exposure locked for a specific part of that I want good exposure for along my flight. It gives you all kind of options. You can lock your white balance and then put the other one on auto white balance. It just gives you the options of doing two different setups so that when you get back home and you look at your footage, you've just got twice as good a chance of having some good results from your footage. Because with the 7.5-inch props, if you build mine like I do, or like I did, with these beefy 3008 motors, it's got plenty of power for carrying the extra GoPro. No problem at all. So now the way most companies will give you their frame weights, they don't include the GPS and SMA mounts in their weights usually, and they don't include the GoPro mount in their weight. So this is just the frame, all the hardware, standoffs, and the camera mount in the front, because that's a required part for carrying the camera. So for that, we're looking at 236 grams. And if you want, you can use the last 3 remaining washers with these fasteners to help hold this mount down really secure. But there's more to explain and get into. There's a number of more mounts for this that give some different possibilities, rear camera mounts, and even underside camera mounts. So I'm going to get into all that in a separate video, but that's the basic frame assembly and all. Well, if you have any questions about the frame, just leave them in the comments below. I'll be happy to answer them. All right, thanks for joining me. We'll see you on the next one.